So, did you succeed? Let's try this together. Task number 1 is all about having that goal and outputting it. And since we're going to start with the composition API, I will start by adding my setup method here in this config object. View will call this method when it sets up this component or view app in this case. And in here, as you learned in the last lectures, we can then define all the data and functions we need in our template. Now here we need a course goal data. Hence, I will define a course goal. I'll define a course goal which could be finish the course. And this is just a regular string here. It's not a ref or anything like that. It's just a string. Let's start with that. Now, important, we have to return an object in setup. This is the object which defines what will be available in the template. And here I want to expose, let's say, a goal key which holds my course goal as a value. And now this goal key is available in the template. So here we can output goal with interpolation. And if I do that and save this, I can reload and see finish the course. And that actually is already task number 1 solved, even though I'm not using a ref or anything like that. But I'm doing this on purpose here, because I really want to emphasize that you don't need a ref just to be able to use setup or return data to the template. You can just return regular, plain JavaScript data like this string. But if you do so, you should be aware that this data is unchangeable. Whenever I want to have code that should change this string, I could maybe write code to do so, but those changes wouldn't be picked up and reflected by Vue in the template, because I'm returning just a string, not a ref and not a reactive object. Now for this course goal, that is actually fine, because the course goal will never change here. However, if you solved this by creating a ref, that's also fine. It might be redundant, but you understood that you need refs typically if you expose something to the template, because otherwise changes might not be reflected. But again, since we never changed this, not using a ref would be fine. Now that's going to change with task number 2 though. There we want to make this button work. And that means 2 things. We need another piece of data, which basically stores the visibility of this h3 tag, and we need a function that should be triggered when this button is clicked. So I will start with the data, and here I will have a goal is visible constant, and here just setting this to false initially will not do the trick. I will never be able to change this, even if I turn it into a variable. I mean, technically I could then change it, but Vue wouldn't pick this up. Still, let's start with this so that we can really see this all in detail. So I have my data here, and I can return this here. Goal is visible. Goal is visible. That's the identifier I can use in the template. That here, after the colon, is my variable name that holds the value which I want to expose to the template. And now I can use this here with vif and point at goal is visible, which now is available in my template. Now to wire up the button, we need a function. And as you learned, you can simply define a function here in your setup method. Toggle goal visibility sounds like a fitting function name to me. And here I want to set goal is visible to what it's currently not. Like this. With the exclamation mark in front of it, I basically invert this boolean. If it was false, it now is true. If it was true, it now is false. And then I store this inverted value back in goal is visible. Now we can expose this function to the template as well by also returning it here. Adding toggle goal visibility and storing the value which is stored in a variable of the same name. And therefore here we can also use this shorthand, also here, where JavaScript will automatically expand this to this longer syntax if names are equal on both sides of the colon. Now the toggle goal visibility function is exposed to the template, And therefore there we can now go to the button and add a click listener and point at toggle goal visibility, so that this function is executed when the click event occurs on this button. However, if we save this, as I already kind of said, nothing will happen. And the reason for that is that I'm using a regular variable here. This is not reactive. View will not notice that the value here changed. It will never update the template. Setup only runs once. It does not run on every click or anything like that. So we only return one data object to the template, and if there is no hint in that object that some values might be reactive, View will not care about changes to those values. So to give View a hint that goal is visible should be reactive, we need to import something from View, as you learned. And here I want to import the ref function. Now we wrap false here with ref, so we call ref and pass false as a default value to this ref, and this creates such a ref object. We can now also convert this to a constant, because we'll never assign a new value to goal is visible, just to goal is visible.value, as you learned on refs. And of course here we also want to access the current value stored in goal is visible and get the opposite of that value as a new value for goal is visible. And now the goal is visible we're passing to the template here in the return object is a ref, and therefore View is aware of its reactivity, and changes will be picked up and will lead to an update being performed in the template. So with that change made, if I reload, now we can toggle the goal with this button. And that's task number 2 solved. Now task number 3 basically just wants me to store all that data differently. At the moment, one of the two values is no ref at all, because it doesn't need to be, and the other value is a single ref. Now to solve task 3, I will also wrap course goal into a ref, even though it's technically not required, but the task wants it. And if I do that, we have this first approach implemented. We're working with 2 separate refs. And if I save that, everything works. Now the second approach, which we should implement, is a single ref object. So here we could have, let's say, course data, we call ref, and we pass an object to ref, and in there we have the goal, which initially is finish the course, and we have the goal visibility, let's say, which initially is false. And we can comment out these other 2 constants here. Now we have this overall object with the nested properties. Now for updating this, instead of using this approach from before, I will reach out to my course data here and access .value to get access to my object, which I have in this ref. And then the goal visibility, which I now again set to the opposite of what it was before by using this code. And now the important thing is how we provide this to the template. As I explained, we don't want to drill into it. I mean, we could do it for the goal. There we could drill into course data.value.goal, since we don't need reactivity for the goal anyways. We're never changing it. But for the visibility, that will not work. If I provide goal is visible by drilling into value goal visibility, you will notice that if I save this, it works, but the button doesn't work. Because we're now drilling into this value, hence we just pass the boolean, the false value which we have initially, to the template, and that value is just a boolean. It's not reactive, and therefore View is not aware that goal is visible might be changing over time. So the proper way of providing this is that we provide our course data, so this entire course data object. We can also use the shorthand here. And then here on VIF, I access course data dot goal visibility, not dot value .goal visibility because, as I mentioned, this gets unwrapped automatically by Vue, so you don't need to drill into the value first. You can directly work with your properties. Now with that, if I reload, it's working. And now we got this second approach implemented using a ref object. The third approach wants a reactive object. So therefore, I'll not import ref anymore, but instead reactive, which is this function you could use to make an object reactive. So now I will copy this here, comment it out so that we still have it for reference, but then I paste it in and use reactive instead of ref. Besides that, it's the same object as before, also has the same constant name. Now for updating it, we no longer need to drill into the .value property, but instead we can now work with it as we could with a regular object. We can directly access goal visibility just like that. And that's the advantage of using reactive. Working with an object is easier and we don't need to drill into value first. Now when it comes to exposing it to the template, we now can still expose the goal like this. That would, however, not be reactive, but we can do it. The only difference to before is that we don't need to drill into .value. But for the data that should be reactive, we still should provide the entire reactive object, so the entire course data object here. With that, however, we can still access goal visibility here in the template, and hence if we save that, like before, it's working. And that was this third approach implemented. Now on to task number 4. There we basically get rid of everything we wrote thus far, and instead we rebuild this with the Options API. Of course, this module is about the Composition API, but you should know how it translates to the Options API. So therefore we can get rid of this reactive import, and we can get rid of this entire setup function. I am commenting it out instead of deleting it so that we still have it around. You could of course delete it. And now we need our old options, data and methods. Methods because we want to trigger a method here upon a click, and data because we have 2 pieces of data. Well, in data we can now return our data object, which essentially is also just such a reactive object if you think about it. I talked about this in the behind the scenes module. And here I want to have my course goal, let's say, which is finish the course, or maybe name it just goal, since that's what I'm using here in the template. And I want to have my goal visibility, which initially is false. Now I can refer to goal visibility just like that without course data here in the template. Of course, we could wrap it into another course data object, but there's no need to do so. Well, and in methods, I basically just want to have the same code as I did down there. So I'll use the same name and add a method called toggle goal visibility. But here we now use this, which is not available in the setup method, but it is in our Options API options, so in methods and data and so on. And here we access this goal visibility and set it equal to what it's currently not, to invert it. And if we do this and save this and reload, we got a working Vue app now using the Options API. And as I already mentioned before, using the Options API is not bad or wrong or anything like that. And if you prefer it, that will be fine. The Composition API is just an alternative which can really shine in bigger apps. That's why we are learning it here in this module, and that's how this example here would translate to the Options API.